The alien general requested silence 3 times before the war conclave finally obeyed. Not because they respected him, but because the last time he spoke uninterrupted, an entire star system vanished from Imperial maps 6 hours later. General Carvex of the 3rd Annihilation Fleet stood at the center of the chamber, armored tail coiled tight, spine rigid with something dangerously close to restraint. 4 eyes stared into the rotating hologram above the obsidian floor. A blue and green planet. Small. Fragile-looking. Earth. Laughter rippled through the chamber. A dirt world, sneered Lord Axeth, mandibles clacking with delight. No unified command. No planetary shield. No psychic caste. They still argue over imaginary borders. Barely interstellar, another noble added. They burn fossil fuels for stars' sake. Carvex said nothing. He had learned long ago that the loudest laughter often preceded extinction. The humans are nothing. Emperor Valtor purred from his throne, talons tapping rhythmically. Our scouts confirm it. 1 strike will suffice. A reminder of imperial gravity. Carvex finally spoke. You are wrong. The chamber fell quiet, not in obedience, but curiosity. I have fought 87 wars. Carvex continued. I have overseen the erasure of species that spanned 1,000 worlds. I know weakness when I see it. His claws flexed slowly. Humans are not weak. They are unfinished. Holographic projections flickered, grainy recordings from the Empire's first encounter. A human exploration vessel drifting near a neutral star lane. Primitive by Imperial standards. No escorts. No shields worth naming. We intercepted their ship, Carvex said. Boarded it. Expected fear. The image shifted. An Imperial Marine stood face to face with a human officer, bloodied, restrained, smiling. Smiling. They asked questions, Carvex said quietly. About us. Our laws. Our history. Not once did they ask for mercy. A counselor scoffed. Defiance is common in primitives. No, Carvex snapped. This was curiosity. As if they were memorizing us. He remembered the human's words clearly. The translator had struggled to keep up with the profanity. You guys really go around doing this? Kicking anthills and calling it civilization? The conclave chuckled uneasily. Their governments protested our detention. Carvex continued. Politely. Formally. They quoted treaties they weren't even part of. And when we ignored them? The Emperor asked. Carvex's voice lowered. They stopped talking. The holo changed again. Orbital footage of Earth's sky filled with fire as Imperial ships struck communication satellites, shipyards, power grids. Clean, surgical devastation. A textbook compliance operation. No planetary shield. No counterattack, Lord Axis said smugly. As expected. Yes, Carvex agreed. As expected. He let the silence stretch. They didn't launch fleets, he said. They didn't send envoys. They didn't beg. What did they do? The Emperor asked, irritation creeping in. They went dark. A murmur passed through the chamber. No signals, Carvex continued. No broadcasts. No surrender codes. Earth disappeared from the network. That is collapse, a noble declared. No, Carvex said. That is digging in. The holo flickered again. An Imperial patrol drifting through an asteroid belt. Sensors quiet. Then chaos. Mines detonating from rocks hollowed by hand. Human-made. Crude. Effective. Boarding footage followed. Imperial Marines advancing through a dark corridor, then human silhouettes surged from vents, from walls, from places that shouldn't exist. No uniform. No insignia. Just eyes full of something feral. They didn't fight like a navy, Carvex said. They fought like predators whose territory had been violated. A counselor leaned forward. You exaggerate losses. I lost 12 ships in the first month, Carvex replied. Then 24 more. Not to fleets. To civilians. The room grew colder. They used mining vessels as torpedo rams, converted freighters into missile barges. They crashed ships into ours at relativistic speeds while broadcasting farewell messages to their families. His voice hardened. They weaponized grief. The Emperor rose slightly from his throne. Enough dramatics. You lost control of the situation. Carvex turned his gaze to the throne at last. Yes, he said. Because I assumed humans valued survival above all else. The hollows shifted one final time. A captured human soldier, restrained, one arm missing, blood pooling beneath him. He was laughing. Laughing. I asked him why he smiled. Carvex said. Do you know what he told me? No one spoke. He said, because now you're involved. And you're too big to hide. Carvex straightened. Humans do not fear war, he said. They fear insignificance. And when threatened with extinction, they do not seek peace. The Emperor's voice thundered. They will kneel. No, Carvex replied. They will adapt. They will fracture. And every fragment will become a weapon. The chamber buzzed with tension. I urge restraint, Carvex finished. Withdraw. Seal borders. Let them rebuild. Because if we escalate... The Emperor slammed his staff into the floor. War is declared. Cheers erupted. Carvex closed his eyes. Far away, on a darkened planet, humanity finished preparing. And for the first time in centuries, General Carvex felt something he had never known in battle. Regret. War did not arrive with fanfare. It arrived with silence. The Imperial Declaration thundered across the galaxy, formal, ritualized, dripping with inevitability. Fleets mobilized. Supply lines spun up. Generals rehearsed speeches about destiny and obedience. Humanity responded with nothing. No counter-declaration. No propaganda. No plea. Just a brief, unauthorized transmission that slipped through an outdated relay, one the Empire had stopped monitoring centuries ago because only smugglers and desperate refugees used it. Message received. Pause. You sure about this? Then static. Admiral Exortel of the 5th Extermination Armada laughed when he heard it. Arrogance, he said, mandibles clacking. They think themselves clever. 3 hours later, his flagship ceased to exist. Not destroyed, removed. One moment it was leading the advance into human-controlled space. The next, its mass signature simply vanished. No explosion. No debris. Sensors screamed contradictions until they overloaded and died. The fleet halted in confusion. Then the mines detonated. They came from nowhere, no propulsion signatures, no energy spikes. Just chunks of rock, metal, ice, and junk welded together by brute force and guided by primitive inertial logic. They didn't target shields. They targeted engines. Life support. Command decks. Human weapons didn't seek victory. They sought crippling harm. Boarding alarms screamed across Imperial ships as humans poured in, not in waves, not in formation, but in chaotic bursts, like breaches in reality. They came through maintenance hatches, cargo vents, emergency airlocks sealed centuries ago. They wore scavenged armor and painted symbols that meant nothing to Imperial translators. One Marine recorded his final moments as a human dragged him into cover while explosions rocked the corridor. The human shouted over the noise, voice raw. You picked the wrong damn species! Then the feed cut out. The Empire adapted quickly, faster than most civilizations ever could. They adjusted sensor algorithms. Hardened hulls. Deployed counterboarding measures. It didn't help. Because humans weren't fighting the Empire's fleets. They were fighting its habits. Human strike teams appeared deep behind Imperial lines, hitting logistics hubs no one thought to guard. They corrupted supply manifests, swapped coordinates, altered fuel compositions by fractions that caused catastrophic failures weeks later. An entire Imperial battle group starved in deep space, not from lack of supplies, but because their food printers refused to recognize authorized biometrics anymore. Someone had changed the passwords. On a captured station, An Imperial captain demanded answers from a human prisoner, an older man with gray in his beard and grease under his fingernails. "Who commands you?" the captain demanded. The human laughed, coughing blood. "Lady, if you ever find out, let me know. I've been asking for 40 years. The real terror began when the Empire pushed into what they believed was human civilian space. There were no civilians. Only bait. A lush colony world, green, populated, undefended. Imperial Marines landed in force, expecting panic. They found dinner tables still warm. Children's toys scattered. Power running. Then the planet detonated. Not from a superweapon, but from its core being destabilized by decades-old mining charges that had been quietly repurposed. The last thing the Imperial Marines heard was a broadcast repeating across all frequencies. "We don't retreat. We relocate." Fear spread, not among soldiers, but among planners. Humanity did not defend territory. They abandoned it. They burned it. They denied the Empire the satisfaction of conquest. General Carvex watched the reports pile up, his scales dull with exhaustion. Every projection confirmed what he had feared. "This is not a war," he muttered. "This is containment failure." When the Empire finally located a human fleet, an actual fleet, it was almost a relief. Hundreds of ships. Old. Ugly. Heavily armored. Bristling with mismatched weapons. They formed a loose wall around a dying star. The Emperor himself authorized the assault. The battle lasted 17 minutes. Human ships did not maneuver. They endured. They soaked fire until their hulls glowed white-hot, then rammed Imperial vessels at full burn. They overloaded reactors deliberately, turning themselves into localized supernovas. One human captain opened a channel mid-collision. "Hey," she said calmly. "Tell your Emperor this was for New Montana." The explosion erased both ships. The Empire claimed victory. Humanity claimed data. Because every human ship recorded everything. They analyzed Imperial tactics, shield frequencies, command delays. They learned faster with each loss. And then they changed the rules again. The next wave wasn't military. It was human. Merchant ships. Medical vessels. Aid convoys. They arrived in neutral systems bordering Imperial space, offering repairs, trade, entertainment. They shared food. Stories. Music. They listened. They asked uncomfortable questions. "Why does the Empire decide your production quotas? Why do your children serve before they choose? Why do you call extermination compliance?" Vassal species began to hesitate. Then to doubt. Then to remember. Rebellions flared, small at first, then spreading like infection. Human weapons appeared in the hands of species the Empire had disarmed centuries ago. The Emperor raged. He ordered an example. A human colony, New Montana, was selected. The fleet arrived without warning. Planetary defenses were minimal. Evacuation incomplete. Orbital fire rained down. Cities burned. Oceans boiled. The broadcast was sent galaxy-wide. "This," the Emperor declared, "is the price of defiance." On Earth, no one watched the broadcast live. They were too busy listening to the screams coming through emergency channels. 12 minutes after New Montana went dark, a human transmission hijacked the same frequency. The image was shaky. Handheld. A human woman stood amid ruins, ash on her face, blood on her hands. She looked straight into the camera. "You wanted a message?" she asked softly. She stepped aside. Behind her lay rows of bodies. Children. Soldiers. Families. Her voice hardened. "You just taught us something important." The feed cut. Across Imperial space, jump gates flickered. And for the first time in its long, blood-soaked history, the Galactic Empire felt something crawl up its collective spine. Something cold. Something patient. Something human. The Empire thought the humans were finished. That the loss of New Montana had broken them. They were spectacularly wrong. Months passed, and Imperial Command believed they were tightening their grip, until the reservists emerged. They were not young, not polished, not shiny. They were grizzled, scarred, gray-haired veterans of Earth's forgotten wars. Farmers who had welded missiles in backyards. Dock workers who had survived orbital collisions. Retirees with nothing left to lose but pride. And now, with everything to avenge, they fought. One of them, a human named Elias Carver, stood on the bridge of a captured Imperial dreadnought, leaning on a console for support. Half his face was burned, one eye missing, and yet he smiled as he addressed his crew. "Listen up," he said, voice raspy but fierce. "I retired twice. Thought I was done. Thought the world was done with me. Then they killed my granddaughter." He slammed a fist on the console. Sparks flew. "We're not here to fight a war of fleets. We're here to fight a war of revenge. And we're going to remind the galaxy why humans invented the word overkill." The human forces moved like ghosts. They didn't attack the Empire's pride, they dismantled it. Supply chains became death traps. Logistics were rewritten with paradoxical instructions. Commands were hijacked. Imperial generals vanished, not in battle, but in suspicious accidents, engineered with simple, brilliant human cunning. One Imperial captain found a note inside his tactical terminal. "Checkmate. Humans." The Empire tried to retaliate. Entire sectors were bombed. Worlds glassed. But humans adapted. They didn't die, they transformed. Civilians became engineers, engineers became strategists, and strategists became hunters. Every loss taught a lesson, every defeat seeded the next victory. Love, humor, and audacity became their weapons. Imperial officers found themselves seduced, bribed, or outwitted by humans whose charm was as deadly as their cunning. Entire fleets defected after a human mechanic promised whiskey, laughter, and the thrill of chaos. And yet the humans did not seek dominion. They did not conquer. They did not kneel before the throne. They simply spread across the galaxy, a virus of persistence and defiance. The final act began when the humans reached the Emperor's throne world again. This time, they did not bring fire. They did not bring fleets. They brought a message. General Carvex was broadcast across every channel, old or scarred, alive, proof that humanity could endure even the deepest betrayal. He spoke softly, but the weight of his words crushed the chamber. "I warned you," he said. "I warned you not to awaken them. You ignored me." The Emperor's claws twitched. "Surrender," he demanded, voice like black ice. A human woman stepped forward. She was old, weathered, standing straighter than any imperial noble. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "No," she said. "We're not here to kneel. We're not here to beg. We're here to end this." She handed Carvex a small detonator. "For New Montana," she said. Carvex hesitated. The chamber held its collective breath. He pressed the button. Nothing exploded. Instead, the throne world systems shut down. Jump gates, weapons, communication arrays, all frozen. The Empire was trapped in isolation, forced to confront the consequences of its own atrocities. Its cities stood, but they were powerless, vulnerable, haunted by the ghosts of human cunning. Carvex exhaled. He looked at the human woman. "They didn't seek power," he whispered. "They wanted justice." The humans left. No empire to rule, no throne to claim. Just a galaxy forever altered by their ingenuity, their patience, and their unwillingness to submit to tyranny. And as the isolated imperial leaders surveyed their crippled dominion, the message was clear: underestimate humanity, and the consequences are not only fatal, they are inevitable. Even in defeat, the humans had won. And the Empire knew it. The galaxy would never forget the lesson of New Montana. Do not provoke humans. Because when humans strike, it is never for glory. It is for something far older: survival, vengeance, and the unrelenting refusal to be forgotten. The war ended without treaties, without banners, without the hollow triumph the Empire had expected. Humanity did not seize the throne. They dismantled it. They left the Imperial core world alive, but crippled, a monument to failure, a cage for those who had once thought themselves gods. The galaxy was littered with stories, warnings whispered from system to system: do not provoke humans. The Empire fractured. Its fleets drifted like wounded predators, its vassals quietly arming themselves with human tactics and salvaged weapons. Every surviving imperial noble wondered, not if, but when humanity would strike again. And the answer was always the same: they don't strike, they endure, and when the time comes, they decide the rules. On a quiet station far from the chaos, General Carvex lived out the remainder of his days tending a small patch of soil brought from New Montana. He played human strategy games against AI opponents he had programmed to cheat, and he taught the young humans, children of survivors, about the empire they had undone. A little girl, dirt-smudged, with eyes too bright for her age, approached him one day. "Why did you help us?" she asked. Carvex stared at the horizon of blinking stars. He had fought in wars that spanned centuries, commanded fleets that reduced planets to ash, and yet this question pierced deeper than any plasma cannon ever could. "Because," he said finally, his voice low and measured, "you are the only species I've met that turns pain into purpose instead of pride." The girl smiled, brushing ash from her cheek. "Cool. Want to hear a joke?" Carvex exhaled, a rumble echoing through his throat. "I fear I have no choice." Far away, drifting through the void, a derelict Imperial probe, damaged, corrupted, abandoned, continued broadcasting one final warning, repeating its fragmented message to any who might listen. War with humans will end in disaster. No one needed to hear it anymore. Everyone already knew. Worlds rebuilt themselves in the human way, imperfect, stubborn, messy, alive. Traders, teachers, and veterans wandered the galaxy, planting seeds of endurance, patience, and cunning in civilizations that had once trembled beneath imperial boots. Humans were not conquerors. They were survivors, and their survival was a lesson harsher than fire. Carvex watched the stars from his quiet station. He saw new colonies rise, new alliances form, new species learning to fight smarter, live freer, and laugh louder. And somewhere, deep inside, he allowed himself a small, private smile. Humans had taught the galaxy an undeniable truth. You do not challenge them. You do not provoke them. You do not survive if you do. And if you forget, they will make sure you remember. The galaxy exhaled. And for the first time in millennia, it felt alive. Humanity did not reign. Humanity endured. And that, more than any throne or fleet, was absolute victory.